JPC Letters. Further letters on climate and changing conditions. Climate and consciousness are inextricably linked, at any given point in evolution. Expansion or stagnation in consciousness equals climate change, plus minus, positive or negative. Proposed. Climate and conditions are ruled by the third and first department, the Mahakohan, Master R, Regent of Europe, representing humanity, and Lord of civilization and culture. The governor of the world, the man who presides over the evolution of the races, the mineral kingdom and the planet, including atmosphere and climates. Technically speaking, each passing tropical year does change, in the extremely long process of the passing or dropping of a subrace according to Blavatsky and the Tibetan. Thus, as the slowly but steadily refining consciousness and vehicles proceeds, over an average period of 25,868 years, so the Earth's atmosphere refines to support the correspondingly higher evolved bodies. Larger fluctuations over 150-200 years of the Industrial Revolution are possibly aberrations to be accounted for. This could mean, possibly, that over a greater tropical year the CO2 mix becomes more rarefied or pure with greater ozone levels in the longer term. I refer to the higher ozone of the Agni Yoga teachings and not of the brown gas in the lower currently polluted atmosphere in certain instances. This is a consideration of an important theosophical quote, reference Secret Doctrine 2, 442. There are many ramifications to this. We might also consider that when desire is burned out on Earth, then form life will end. The type of desire generated by humanity causes heating or cooling. I think we are in a heating cycle, and indeed we are in a fire cycle which I have pointed out many times. How humanity lives on Earth will be conditioned by this. Thus the dependency on carbon and resulting pollution and heating also. Mars will in eons of time, come out of pralaya and create its own ecosystem. Human monasic entities might transfer to Mars just as some will come from Mars to Earth, but it will be the egoic lotuses that will transfer, not the forms. The forms will evolve later when a suitable atmosphere is created to sustain form life. We need a greenhouse effect to live, but one that might be out of balance could result in increased infrared radiation being trapped in prematurely as the sun's energy is not allowed to radiate back out through the upper atmosphere. Add to the atmosphere any other chemicals or pollutants, and the friction and chemical reaction caused by the solar radiation striking the atmosphere will increase significantly, and result in runaway, in the extreme, of greenhouse heating. The greenhouse effect on Venus is the result of desire having burned out, as decay indicates, and thus form life having ended. Greenhouse gases and water vapor have burned out and evaporated, and dense chemicals only are left, carbon and sulfur in high density. Monasic humanity is formless on Venus, thus the atmosphere does not have to support form life. Yes, humanity creates its atmosphere, and when the form is removed the planet withers. But regarding the moon, humanity was removed and the planet died absolutely, as there were no monasic units left at all. The circulatory flow was rendered dead. Venus has maniac units and an atmosphere, but it's one that would not support form life due to the acidic and carbonic nature of the atmosphere, which is a runaway collapse of a form life sustaining greenhouse effect. A question might be, are skeptics on any current greenhouse eccentricities denying it is happening or that it could happen? Are we speaking of skeptics saying we should be warming or we are not warming, or that we are the same as ever? Or just that man has no effect on climate? Man obviously has recognized that climate changes and that we are warming, and has looked to human activity. One debate might be, can human pollution cause chemical changes in the atmosphere? To a degree, yes it can, and that is proven with the CFC. So how else are we altering things, due to our activities? There is also a concern about thawing Siberian bogs releasing more of the greenhouse gas methane. This is much more potent, that could cause catastrophe to Earth. Climates change, and that is natural, and DK advises a study of this subject with regards to racial consciousness and how this may affect changes in climates around the world. We might generally consider the global consciousness or group consciousness of humanity, and how these affect our planet. There is no question that there are climate changes and we have to adapt to it. Jobs change or shift, so I don't see a problem with employment variables due to eco-responsibility. There may be no problem in the longer term when money is diverted away from large monopolies to eco-resources, as some are good. If the longer picture means a more responsible energy usage with more responsible concern for environment, then this in my view is a good direction and quite the reverse of the direction business, collateral and environment irresponsibility was heading even 50 or 100 years ago. DK states that the selfish scientific personalities which were responsible for much of the Industrial Revolution brought conditions which were deleterious to humanity. So at least we are moving in a better direction, even if slowly. There is no question that certain people or types will be here for the money that can be filtered off and the opportunity to do business. It is the general direction of energy efficiency and cleanliness that should be supported. There are those that will also manipulate or distort data either stupidly or willfully, but the general trend is not disturbed. We are heading in the right direction, and that is important. Volcanoes emit carbonic pollutants, of course, and when humanity were inundated or the local environment was contaminated, humans were destroyed or migrated to other zones. The ongoing axial shifts are still responsible for much earthquake and volcano activity and have, according to DK, much that will cause humans distress and disorientation. So climate change also take into account these great shifts. I think it healthy to take these as good scientific hypothesis. I think, however, it is an inevitable outlook, and one that DK indirectly and directly points out, and also serves as a positive step to cleaner living, and a better understanding, relatively, of our environment. It doesn't matter if human understanding is imperfect or wrong. It does matter that the world group consensus is globally looking at human environmental responsibility. Quote, "It is interesting and saddening to note that that which at present goes out of the average house is the refuse that is undesirable. This is the correspondence to that which is selfish and sadden the demand for the satisfaction of personal needs and desires." Esoteric Healing. 3940. How much more applicable is this today, comparative to when it was written? The above can be applied to any waste product of human material consumption, can it not? I think it is a healthy and sound idea to take on board. There are extremes in everything, yes, but the so-called environmental movement is generally sound. We have a runaway greenhouse effect as there is no evidence for it, and there is every possibility of Earth correcting or settling into a stable axis and making adjustments to upper atmosphere. This will eventually happen, and DK definitely says there are no great disasters predicted by hierarchy for humanity. We ever take this on board, and neither do I hold it against humanity for not having this information due to consciousness polarization. I tend to see the more positive approach that DK makes, regarding the carbon footprint, which we see addressed by humanity today. That is, really speaking, I don't hold with the view of a propaganda issue for economic control, just because humanity addresses the carbon footprint. The Tibetan also addresses this, and I really do think it is commendable that humans are giving it some thought today. however imperfectly. On new land opening up, how much has, and of what quality is it? The general depletion of topsoil and even desertification and shift is more usually the concern, even if over-fertilization or pollution of arable land is prevalent, and of man's own doing. Concretion or deforestation of the landscape is no substitute for good growing land. Humanity is today rapidly coming to terms with this stupendous statement of the Master, though they may know it not. The refuse produced by human beings is today at an unprecedented and alarming level compared to 50 or 100 years ago, even though greater or lesser proportions are recycled and reused. DK explicitly states that that which goes out of the house as refuse is undesirable, and indicative of demand for satisfaction of personal needs and desires, and that it is selfish and sad. No doubt there will always be a small proportion of waste from a household, though it is indicative that the proportional levels of waste even then was unnecessary or reflective of how humanity should be living. This illustrates a great deal. Today humanity is at a crisis point. This is a good sign and there is hope for right decision. Man and woman currently consumes energy in vast quantities, and this largely is achieved by the mining and production of coal, oil, gas and their allied products, which are carbon-based fossil fuels. These are some thoughts which invite our reflection. JPC. January 10, 2010.